Oh, you really thought it was over, didn't you? You thought when you said okay and turned your back, it was just another Tuesday. Another conversation ended, another moment filed away in the archives of forgettable interactions. But no, no. That single word, that calm little four-letter response, that unbothered exit that triggered something you couldn't have predicted in your wildest nightmares. Because when you said okay and walked away, you didn't just end a conversation. You started an investigation. A full-blown lights flashing, records pulled, calls made, meetings held investigation. And the best part, the most beautiful, poetic, karma-drenched part. They found absolutely nothing because you were clean. You were always clean. And that, my friend, that's what broke them. Let's rewind to that moment, shall we? Picture it. The confrontation, the accusations, the drama they'd been rehearsing in their minds for weeks, months, maybe years. They came at you loaded, armed with assumptions, dripping with certainty that this time, they had you cornered. They wanted the explosion. They wanted the breakdown. They wanted you to scream, cry, beg, explain, defend, crumble. They needed your reaction like oxygen. They fed off conflict like vampires on blood. And what did you give them? Okay. Just okay. Not okay. But let me explain. Not okay. You're wrong. Not okay. We need to talk about this. Just clean, surgical, soul-crushing. Okay. And then you walked. No door slam, no final words, no dramatic music, just footsteps fading into silence. And that silence detonated their entire world. Because here's what they didn't understand. People who are guilty don't say okay and leave. Guilty people fight. Guilty people defend. Guilty people scramble to control the narrative because they know the truth is chasing them down like a pack of wolves. But you had nothing to hide. You had nothing to prove. You had nothing to fear. So when they threw their accusations like grenades, you didn't duck. You didn't catch them and throw them back. You just stepped aside and let them explode in their own hands. Your okay wasn't surrender. It was dismissal. It was the most powerful two-label rejection of their entire fantasy. It was you saying without saying, you're not even worth the energy it would take to correct you. And they felt that. Oh, they felt that in their bones, in their pride, in their fragile little egos that had been banking on your reaction to validate their crusade. But then something shifted because in the hours, days, weeks after you walked away, they started spiraling. They started questioning, wait, why didn't they fight back? Why didn't they defend themselves? Why were they so calm? What do they know that we don't? What are they hiding? And that's when the paranoia kicked in. That's when the obsession took root. That's when they became the very thing they accused you of being, unhinged. They couldn't sleep. They couldn't focus. They replayed that moment over and over again in their minds, dissecting your face, your tone, your body language, searching for cracks, for clues, for anything that would confirm their suspicions. But there was nothing. You were stone. You were steel. You were untouchable. And that drove them insane. Because if you were innocent, if you really had nothing to hide, then that meant they were wrong. And being wrong meant they were the villains. And villains don't get happy endings. So they did what desperate people do when the truth doesn't match their story. They investigated. Oh yes, they went full detective mode. They called in favors. They reached out to mutual connections. They dug through your past like archaeologists hunting for buried treasure. They analyzed your social media, your work history, your friendships, your habits, your patterns. They built timelines. They cross-referenced dates. They interviewed people you hadn't spoken to in years. They turned your entire existence into a cold case file, convinced that if they just looked hard enough, deep enough, long enough, they'd find the smoking evidence, the proof, the validation, the justification for their witch hunt. They needed you to be guilty. Not because you wronged them, but because your innocence exposed their malice. And that was unacceptable. So they searched and they searched and they searched, and guess what they found? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Clean records, clean relationships, clean reputation. You were a ghost in their conspiracy theory, a blank page in their book of lies. Here's where it gets even better, though, because while they were busy playing investigator, while they were consumed with proving you were the monster they painted you to be, you were out here living, unbothered, unburdened, unbroken. You didn't check over your shoulder. You didn't lose sleep wondering what they were saying, what they were planning, what they were finding. Why? Because you knew. You knew there was nothing to find. You knew your conscience was clear. You knew your hands were clean. And that knowing, that unshakable certainty, that quiet confidence, that was your armor. They thought your silence meant fear. They thought your exit meant guilt. But it didn't. It meant freedom. It meant you had evolved past the need to be understood by people who were committed to misunderstanding you. You had transcended their drama, their chaos, their need to drag you into the mud. And that transcendence, that was the real threat. Because think about it, what's more terrifying to a liar than someone who lives in truth? What's more dangerous to a manipulator than someone who refuses to be manipulated? What's more infuriating to a narcissist than someone who simply doesn't care? Your okay was a mirror. It reflected their accusations right back at them. It forced them to sit with their own toxicity, their own projections, their own insecurities, and they couldn't handle it. So, they doubled down. They got louder. They got messier. They got more desperate. They turned up the heat, thinking you'd eventually crack, thinking the pressure would force you to react, to engage, to give them the drama they craved. But you didn't. You just kept walking, kept building, kept rising. And every step you took forward was a step they took backward into their own self-destruction. Now, let's talk about the psychology behind this, because it's important you understand the full picture. When someone launches an investigation into your life after you've calmly walked away, it's not about you. It never was. It's about them. It's about their need to be right, their need to win, their need to control the narrative. See, people like this, they operate from a place of deep insecurity. They need external validation to feel whole. They need to tear others down to feel tall. They need to create enemies to feel important. And when you refused to be their enemy, when you denied them the battle they were so desperately seeking, you disrupted their entire identity. You took away their purpose, their mission, their reason for existing in that moment. And that created a vacuum, a void, a crisis. Because if you weren't the villain, then what were they? Heroes? No, they were just people throwing punches at shadows, screaming into voids, building cases against ghosts. And here's the kicker. The harder they looked, the worse they appeared. Because while they were obsessing over you, people were watching them. And what they saw wasn't a concerned friend or a righteous truth seeker. They saw someone unhinged, someone obsessed, someone who couldn't let go. And slowly, quietly, the tables turned. The whispers that were once about you started redirecting toward them. Why are they so fixated on this person? Why can't they move on? What are they really trying to hide? Because projection is a boomerang. What you throw at others with malice always comes back to hit you in the face. And they threw hard. They threw with intent to destroy. So when it came back with compound interest. And you didn't have to lift a finger. You didn't have to defend yourself. You didn't have to expose them. You just had to exist in your truth, in your peace, in your unbothered energy. And that was enough. Let's pause here and appreciate the absolute poetic justice of this situation. They wanted to catch you slipping. They wanted to expose you. They wanted to drag your name through the dirt and stand over the wreckage victoriously, but instead they exposed themselves. They revealed their own darkness, their own desperation, their own moral bankruptcy. And the beautiful irony, you never said a word. You never pointed fingers. You never retaliated. You just said, "Okay," and walked away. And that restraint, that discipline, that refusal to descend to their level, that's what made you untouchable. Because you can't investigate someone who's already transparent. You can't expose someone who's already open. You can't destroy someone who's already whole. They were hunting for skeletons in a closet that didn't exist. They were searching for dirt on someone who'd already cleaned their house. They were building a case against a defendant who was never on trial. Now, I know what you're thinking, but why? Why did they go so hard? Why did they care so much? And the answer is simple yet profound. Because your indifference was the ultimate insult. Your lack of reaction was the loudest statement. Your exit was the final rejection. See, when you care what people think, when you defend yourself, when you engage in the back and forth, you're giving them power. You're acknowledging their opinion matters. You're validating their existence in your world. But when you say, "Okay," and walk away, you're saying, "You don't matter enough for me to fight. You don't matter enough for me to explain. You don't matter enough for me to stay." And that cuts deeper than any insult ever could, because it's not anger. It's not hatred. It's something worse. It's irrelevance. You rendered them irrelevant. And people will burn the world down before they accept being irrelevant. So they investigated. They called people. They asked questions. They gathered evidence. They built their case. And with every phone call, every conversation, every attempt to paint you as the villain, they were unknowingly painting themselves as the obsessed, the unstable, the unhinged. Because here's the thing about investigations. They require substance. They require evidence. They require proof. And when you have none of those things, when your entire case is built on feelings, assumptions, and projections, it collapses. And not quietly, loudly, messily, publicly. People started seeing through it. Wait, you've been investigating this person for months and found nothing. Absolutely nothing. Then what are we even talking about? And just like that, the narrative shifted. You went from suspect to survivor, from accused to acquitted, from questioned to untouchable. And they went from prosecutors to perpetrators, from righteous to ridiculous, from feared to forgotten. But let's dig even deeper, because there's a layer to this that's absolutely crucial. "You're okay" wasn't just a word. It was a weapon. A calculated, precise, soul-crushing weapon. Because in that moment, when you chose calm over chaos, when you chose silence over explanation, when you chose exit over engagement, you took away their ammunition. You disarmed them. You left them standing there, loaded weapons in hand with no target to shoot at. And that disarmament, that was strategic brilliance. Because fighting fire with fire just creates a bigger fire. But fighting fire with water, that extinguishes it completely. Your calm was the water. Your okay was the flood. And their accusations, their anger, their drama, they drowned. Not because you overpowered them, but because you didn't engage them at all. You didn't give them the energy they needed to sustain their attack. You starved them of the reaction they craved. And without that reaction, they had nothing. They were performers without an audience, accusers without a defendant, warriors without a war. And oh, how that must have eaten them alive. Can you imagine spending all that time, all that energy, all that effort, building a case, gathering your evidence, rallying your troops, preparing your attack, only to have it met with 2 syllables and a turn back? That's not just defeat. That's humiliation. That's emasculation. That's the ultimate dismissal. Because you didn't just refuse to fight. You refused to acknowledge the fight was even happening. You treated their grand accusation like background noise, like a commercial break. Like something so insignificant it didn't even warrant a response beyond okay. And for people who thrive on drama, who live for conflict, who need attention like plants need sunlight, that indifference was death. A slow, painful, egrushing death. And the worst part for them, they couldn't even blame you because you didn't do anything. You just left. And leaving isn't a crime. Leaving isn't an attack. Leaving is a choice. Your choice. And that choice exposed the fact that they never had power over you in the first place. Now, while they were busy investigating, let's talk about what you were doing. Living, thriving, evolving, building, creating, expanding. You weren't checking your phone every 5 minutes to see if they were talking about you. You weren't losing sleep over what they might find. You weren't spiraling into anxiety about their opinions or their plans. Why? Because you were free. Free from the burden of needing to be right. Free from the prison of public perception. Free from the chains of other people's approval. You had done the inner work. You had cleared your conscience. You had made peace with your past. You had nothing to hide and nothing to prove. And that freedom, that was your superpower. Because while they were stuck in the past, obsessing over you, you were building your future. While they were digging through your history, you were creating your legacy. While they were investigating your life, you were living it. And that's the difference between someone who operates from guilt and someone who operates from grace. Guilt keeps you looking back. Grace keeps you moving forward. And here's what they didn't anticipate. The investigation itself became the evidence. Not evidence of your guilt, but evidence of their obsession. Every person they called, every question they asked, every stone they turned over, it all came back to one conclusion. This person is obsessed. And obsession is never a good look. It screams insecurity. It screams instability. It screams unresolved trauma. It screams projection. And the more they searched, the more obsessed they appeared. The more questions they asked, the more desperate they seemed. The more they tried to expose you, the more they exposed themselves. Because clean people don't need investigations. Innocent people don't require proof. Truth doesn't demand validation. It just exists quietly, confidently, unshakably. And that's what you were. Truth embodied, walking evidence that not everyone operates from a place of deception. Living proof that some people really are exactly who they appear to be. Breathing testimony that integrity still exists in a world full of imposters. Let me tell you what really happened behind the scenes, because this is where it gets absolutely delicious. Every single person they called, every connection they reached out to, every mutual friend they interrogated, none of them had anything bad to say. Not because you're perfect, but because you're real, because you treated people with respect, because you honored your commitments, because you moved with integrity, because you didn't play games, because you didn't manipulate, because you didn't lie. And when person after person, conversation after conversation, interview after interview yielded the same result, nothing, absolutely nothing incriminating, something started to crack. Not in you, in them. Because cognitive dissonance is a monster. When what you believe doesn't match what reality is showing you, your brain starts to fracture. And their brains, they were shattering because they were so convinced, so certain, so sure that if they just dug deep enough, they'd find the dirt. But there was no dirt. There was no scandal. There was no hidden darkness. There was just you living your life, minding your business, being human, being flawed but not fraudulent, being imperfect but not corrupt. And you want to know what the real investigation revealed? It revealed that the only crime you committed was refusing to play their game. The only sin you carried was not meeting their expectations. The only guilt you bore was being strong enough to walk away. That's it. That's the full report. That's the entire case file. You said okay and walked away. And that triggered them so deeply, wounded their egos so profoundly, shattered their sense of control so completely that they had to create a conspiracy to explain it. Because accepting the simple truth that you just didn't care enough to fight was too painful, too humiliating, too ego-destroying. So they built a narrative. They created a story where you were the villain and they were the heroes exposing the truth. But narratives require evidence. Stories need proof. And when the evidence didn't exist, when the proof never materialized, the story collapsed. And they were left standing in the rubble of their own delusion, holding nothing but their shattered pride and their misplaced rage. Here's the part that's going to sting them for years, maybe decades, maybe forever. You never even knew they were investigating. Or if you did, you didn't care. You weren't sitting around wondering what they were finding. You weren't anxious about what they were saying. You weren't defensive about what they might discover. You were just living. And that obliviousness, that complete and total disinterest in their opinion of you, that unbothered energy, that's what made you untouchable. Because you can't hurt someone who doesn't give you access. You can't destroy someone who doesn't need your validation. You can't expose someone who's already standing in the light. They thought they were conducting an investigation. But really, they were conducting a seance, trying to summon a version of you that didn't exist. They were hunting ghosts, chasing shadows, building cases against projections of their own insecurities. And in the end, the only thing they proved was that some people would rather destroy themselves searching for someone else's darkness than face their own. And now that the investigation is over, now that every avenue has been exhausted, now that every stone has been turned and every connection has been questioned and every theory has been tested and debunked, what are they left with? Silence. The same silence you gave them when you said, "Okay," and walked away. Except their silence isn't peaceful. It's heavy. It's suffocating. It's filled with regret, with embarrassment, with the dawning realization that they wasted months, maybe years, obsessing over someone who didn't even think about them. They spent all that energy, all that time, all that emotional bandwidth building a case that crumbled the moment it was examined. And you spent that same time building a life, a career, a future, a version of yourself that's so far removed from their drama, their chaos, their toxicity that even if they wanted to reach you now, they couldn't because you're not on their level anymore. You're not in their world anymore. You're not accessible to their madness anymore. Let's talk about what happens next because this is important.